I too am Ambassador Elite, and my name is
You
Beck
are
Shandapur.
also an Ambassador Elite.
Indeed.
How many
indeed.
nights, Sam?
Not 160, but not far.
Anybody got 160 beat out there? 160
Do I
nights?
see 160?
Anyone?
160?
Oh,
I
one
got
in the back.
160, 170?
Thank you.
All right, let's go. So, Peggy,
Yes.
you have the easiest job at Marriott by
Simple.
far. Only 300 million, approaching 300 million Bonvoy members. I read Tony's quote. A 9-seat A&W root beer stand is now 10,000 hotels, as was planned for just under 100 years, and you got it in 99. So let's start off with relationship. How do you personally know each and every one of your 300 million Bonvoy members?
Well, first of all, I wake up every morning to about 5 to 10 members who write me personally. So I do actually know a lot of our members quite personally. But I think your question to me is really about personalization at scale, right? How do we do that? The good news is we have hundreds of thousands of people every day in our hotels meeting hundreds of members and customers, and every interaction is one that we can personalize, and that's how we think about it. So it doesn't matter how big we get, right?
Yeah, listen, it's daunting to me to think about when, I've scaled businesses throughout my career to dozens of units, hundreds of units, to think 10,000 from the most luxurious hotels to limited stay, limited service experiences and everything in between. When you think of customer experience, what's the through line that you define for your guests, no matter if I'm staying in a limited service hotel or one of your elite Ritz-Carlton reserves?
Yeah, what's incredible is, our customers are going to stay across the tier at multiple price points depending on the purpose of their trip and who they're traveling with. And so the way we like to think about it is to meet travelers where they are, right? But it really takes pretty deep understanding of who you are, Sam, why you're traveling, who you're traveling with, and that specific occasion. And so that's how we try to get to the personalization at scale. Yeah.
And look, when I think of, again, going back to relationships, food and beverage experiences, which we'll talk about in a minute, but consumer tastes have changed. And I remember, true story, for my senior year prom in Laguna, California, my dad booked the Ritz-Carlton dining room for my prom date and our friends. And I remember walking into this dining room. Thank God we had flasks with us, because I was looking around. I'm like, this is the most boring experience I've ever had. And where all the rest of my buddies were doing different dinners. And that was over 30 years ago. Should probably longer than that. When I think about guest just preferences evolving and changing, especially the last 10 years, it blows my mind from, it was 15 years ago. Now the camera needs to eat first. I need to take a picture of my food. Instagram, everyone's doing their, discovery on TikTok and Instagram with influencers. What are some of the biggest changes in consumer preferences today versus 10 or 15 years ago?
Well, first of all, I love what you started with, which is a memory from 30 years ago. And our aspiration is to be beyond a transactional points program, right? Bonvoy wants to be your lifelong travel partner. And so your first introduction to us, maybe it was a boring dinner, but you still remembered.
I was also 17.
I know, at 17. But, today you asked me about the changes. Like, people are traveling much earlier, right? We're influencing kids when they're very young in their within their families, and their parents are introducing them to a Marriott hotel. And for us, it's about understanding not just your preferences on that trip to meet you where you are across that journey, but to think about where you are in your life stage and to really understand how you're evolving. Because what we can see now with members who've been in our program for 30 and 40 years, like, we can see the trends around how you travel through your lifetime. And so that's what I'm super excited about, because that's how we get to connect with you emotionally and be there for the moments that matter most in your life.
Well, look, as the first chief customer officer for Marriott, it's a big job. And the reason I mentioned that high school prom story for that dinner, fast forward to, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, we opened Ritz-Carlton and Nomad together. And the evolution from design to experiences, and I remember Tony sitting in the lobby during his CNBC interview, and he said, this is the future of the Ritz-Carlton brand. And I was very proud to be a small part of that. And when I look back on, again, that evolution over 30 years, the reason that was so forward thinking and evolved from that original Ritz-Carlton wasn't luxury, just the definition of luxury had changed, because the 40-something-year-old guest who's staying there wanted to hang out in a cutting-edge design, have their breakfast, lunch, and dinner there, host their special meal, end up at the rooftop bar, so on and so forth. How are you thinking about now going into experiences within the four walls? How are you changing the way you think about the business across all your brands when it comes to experiences?
Yeah, I think I love what we did together in your previous role in that job, because we took a physical hotel, which is kind of where we started our business. And yes, we designed a Ritz-Carlton to be a modern experience and to have all the things that people would want today. But then we came and overlaid a passion around culinary, right, with Jose Andres, and not just have great restaurants in there, but then to connect the dots. Like, we created an itinerary, an experience, not just for your trip, but for your culinary experience, traveling to each of the restaurants in the hotel all the way up to the bar into the evening. And I think that's the double click on experiences, is to dive deep into the passions, to understand what the people who really love that passion, what would be the over the top experience. That's what luxury is. It's like, we have so many experiences where people, the most high net worth people in the world, could not come up with that on their own or create that experience for themselves. And to me, that's the intersection of where we can play.
Yeah, I always think of the little touches that make the experience. How do you define in your vision of what turns, a stay into a memory, into an experience? What is that bridge to transform a stay?
It's a little bit back to your very first question to me. How do you create personalization at scale? How do you run a loyalty program with so many people? It relies on really the people in the hotel at every interaction. And so I go to these conferences where we have hundreds of thousands of general managers and owners of our hotels, because most of our hotels are franchised. And we talk about technology transformation and how it's coming and how it'll evolve and all these things. But at the end of the day, I remind people that every single interaction in the hotel is one where we have the opportunity to create a memory from the feeling that we created with that person. And so with all the technology today, it's sometimes you forget to look the person in the eye that you're checking into the hotel with, and remember that person has their own story and history behind them, and they've had a good day or the bad day. But to make that connection is how we create the memory. When I talk to the members about why they come back to us, they usually don't say it's about the points, right? They do like the points, don't get me wrong, but they can usually evoke a memory like you just did, down to the person, the place, the brand, the location, the hotel, and that's the piece that's really powerful.
I have to put a plug in for the training team at Ritz. I've always prided myself throughout all these hospitality leadership roles on making sure you not just train, but you hire the right people with the right DNA. And hospitality, you either have it in you or you don't. I've never seen anything like the Ritz-Carlton training. And I was joking around, I'm like, it's like an indoctrination into a cult. And it's like people just live and breathe the Ritz-Carlton brand. And it was really impressive to watch. Talking about experiences beyond F&B. Obviously, for years, we've partnered together on the food and beverage side. And people take vacations and plan their breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and I'm guilty of that. My wife often gets mad at me when I have a whole week's itinerary and the only thing I've planned are meals, and I have to squeeze in a hike somewhere so I don't feel so guilty. But when you think of now experiences beyond the four walls, what are some of the things that are front and center for you, thinking about full service and the luxury segmentation?
Yeah, I think just this trend around experiences. We've all been talking about it for many years now, pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think what we observe has happened after COVID is that because these experiences are also more visible in social, you asked about trends, over something like 70 to 80% of the people go to social for inspiration. And you can see all of this content being created by creators or individuals, and that is creating that desire to go do things. It gives you new ideas. It makes it seem possible. The trend on outdoors, not everybody would consider themselves an outdoor person before. And today when you see somebody else doing it, you're like, hey, it seems like I could do that too. And so those creators, that social content is really driving people to want to invest more money to go do those things. And so it's sort of shifting the way we think about our marketing in our industry and what experiences we go create and deliver. I think what I'm excited about in terms of that change is that we just launched Ask Bonvoy, which is our AI solution for planning and inspiration. It's going to members first, and we're testing and learning our way into scaling it. So by the end of the year, everybody will have it. But it's allowing us to get a firsthand look at how people are thinking about what they're looking for their experiences. And that will allow us to then better curate the personal experiences. Because everybody is after today the sports, the music, but those are broad categories of things. Like what I really want to understand is what's going to move the needle for you, Sam, because it's really important to you and it's something that you couldn't get from anybody else.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was reading about Ask Bonvoy. Everyone is excited to see how personalization happens, and we'll come back to that in tech in a minute. But when it comes to experiences, when you think about health and wellness and this movement that's taken place, which is exciting because, having really embraced the lifestyle, especially being a frequent traveler, people are like, oh, it's so hard to eat well. It's so hard to work out. And I remember doing hotels where the first hotel gym was in the basement, poor airflow, was kind of an afterthought. And now you have the fitness, the health and wellness, the recovery, cold plunges, red lights, all this. How are you thinking about the next 5 years with respect to health and wellness and longevity?
Thank you for asking. Big space for us. We're digging deep and we're looking for the right partners to help bring that to life. The big shift, I always like to stick with simple insights, right? People used to look at their vacation as the time to go rest, relax, recover. Now people want to take that with them on the trip, right? Every day, it's all the right thing to do, right? We're all looking at our data and trying to figure out how we sleep better, eat better, move well. Weston has been a brand that we've always positioned around wellness, but we want to take it to the next level across all of our brands. So we signed an agreement with LaFay on the luxury side to kind of bring wellness experiences to life for the rest of our brands. We're thinking about that journey. So tomorrow we have Jamie Oliver, Tony, our CEO, will be talking to Jamie about how we think about simple meals and nutrition like during the stay. I'm interviewing Hoda on Wednesday because of her new platform, Joy 101. And it's about these small bites of how you take joy with you into every day, particularly when you're traveling and it can be tough. And we just recently announced a partnership with Therme, like a big wellness brand is taking wellness at scale. Think about the Gaylord Hotel Resort at scale in a wellness experience, but taking those learnings and feeding that through our hotels. And so you'll see it evolve in terms of the spa and the fitness center, but I think you're going to evolve. We'll evolve through the whole experience. Like, we own sleep. Like, there's probably more people sleeping with us than anywhere else in the world. And so we're almost at 2 million rooms. We're going to really double down on making that better.
Again, the scale is pretty spectacular. So let's go outside of the four walls now. And, when I started my career in casinos and then we evolved to resorts, I thought resorts and casinos have always led the ability to keep guests on property and maximize the capture of the guest spend, curate the experience from this is where I'm staying, this is where I'm dining, casinos, this is where I'm gaming, the spa, the nightclub, so on and so forth. Four walls, keep people on property. When you think of urban, people want to venture off. And this was a challenge, not to keep picking on the rich nomad, but it was, I'm staying here for 2 nights. There's only 40,000 restaurants in Manhattan that I want to try. How are you now thinking about beyond the 4 walls with the hotel room as the anchor? And I'm living this personally with Built, where our anchor is the home, and we're putting together this neighborhood experience for neighborhood commerce to get people to go to the different fitness and their pharmacy and dining, so on and so forth. The parallels are pretty exciting. We just have different starting points.
Yeah, I think, again, our aspiration is to be your lifelong travel partner, right? So we want to be thought of as more than a hotel brand. Like, we're a lifestyle brand for people who love to travel, right? So I think about us as not promoting just hotels. Hotels are the base, but we're promoting the destinations that you want to go to. And then when you're in that destination, what is the experience you want to have? And so I think being able to think about itineraries, I think that AI will naturally go there, right? Like in our own Ask Bonvoy experimentation, I asked it, I said, I have one son who loves culinary. He's a foodie. I have another son who loves golf, and my husband likes to hike, right? I pretty much do whatever they want to do as long as it's in a Marriott. So where should I go, right? And so naturally it leads you to destinations, and then what's the next piece? What am I going to do when I'm there? And I think we're not going to say you're only going to stay in the hotel, right? We're going to curate a recommendation for you based on what we know about you.
So that covers, the experience part within the hotel, around the hotel with activities. But for most people, they travel 2 weeks a year, maybe a month a year. What about the rest of the year? How do you keep front of mind with your customers and your guests when they're not staying on property?
I mean, it is about earning your way to those experiences. And we've got our partnership with Uber, our partnership with Starbucks, and a lot more where we want to be present because people are actually always thinking about travel. They're not necessarily traveling all the time, but they're aspirational about their next trip. And so we want to make sure that we're the ones that they're thinking about. And if you think about how AI will evolve with us, when you come and you're a member and you ask Bonvoy, we'll be cataloging the things you ask. And, eventually I can see a world where we're talking about the multiple trips that you have in progress with us, right? In your mind. And where are you in your process of getting to that decision? We want to help you get there.
So I think that's a great segue to where is the future headed with technology and personalization. The LLM side is fascinating right now because it is allowing, and we're forward thinking, leading with it, really being your neighborhood concierge. You're launching Ask Bonvoy. I've had this conversation with 10 other major brands that are all using underlying large language models to define their own personalization. How do you think about interacting with guests? And really, I don't even know how to phrase this other than the word threat comes to mind because we're building all this internally under our own brand, but yet you have these mega platforms that are essentially acting as a concierge, learning way too much about us, really without any guardrails. How do you think about Ask Bonvoy versus the time and the hours I spend opening my heart up to Claude and getting great relationship advice and travel advice and fitness advice and so on and so forth?
I think that, first of all, our intention is to always be human-centered. We start with that. In any conversation about technology, for us, that is our differentiation point, right? It's the interaction you have with the person in the hotel when you arrive. The ability to look somebody in the eye and care about them is how the feeling gets created and the memory gets created. I don't know if you're going to create that many memories with your agent that you'll remember 30 years later. Maybe you will. But
you haven't met my agent.
Maybe. But we will always focus on that. And in fact, a lot of our AI work right now is about enabling the humans that do that work every day to be better at how they do it and to take all that manual work off of them so they can. If I think forward, I think that we will always figure out how that is at the center, and how we differentiate from others is that I guess you could tell Claude all those things, but can Claude make that happen in the hotel? No. So that's our protective mode. Like, we're not going to let everybody in on that, right? Maybe we'll be friends with Claude, but only if it makes sense for what we can deliver for that customer. But we will be very protective of that customer. Our brand is about quality, consistency, and trust, right? Why do people stay with us around the world when they go to a place they don't know anything about? It's because they trust us. And so we're going to be very careful about who we partner with and what we do with the data to be able to deliver.
Yeah, I think that the ability to actually execute is the protective moat around both of our businesses. You know, the integration into the neighborhood, the integration into experiences. You can get the recommendation, but ultimately you need to deliver a personalized experience and put your brand next to it. You know, I've watched the evolution of personalization from what was so manual. And I remember as a kid, I go into, it was a local Italian place my dad liked to go to. The maitre d' knew his name, knew he loved martinis with 3, olives, not 2, but 3. And it was like that level. That maitre d', may he rest in peace, is no longer with us, as most of the industry's evolved. Then when I think about like the early, late 2000s, when I was in nightlife, you had people who were very present, and there was not one cell phone in sight. People were, enjoying the energy, the vibe, taking it in, and it was the most present, real experience. Fast forward, every concert, you see a sea of cell phones recording it. When you think of customer experience and how that's evolved, now that when you're thinking about personalization, how do you find that hospitality is still this last safe place? Again, outside of the camera eating first, a dining room, people are having conversations. A nightclub, people are still filming, but they're enjoying the experience. Talk through why hospitality is so important for humanity and where things are headed as we take on more and more AI and technology, that this is, one last place that is protected against that.
I think we really think about our business. Yes, we're in hotels, but we really connect people to communities around the world, right? Our hotels are owned by owners who live in every country in the world. The associates in our hotel come from that place. I mean, that is, at the end of the day, like more than a hotel, it's the community that we connect people to. And so I think keeping that in mind as we grow and scale and all the technology moves around us is how we will think about the future. And that'll always be there. There's a yearning, right, for connecting with people that we all know exists after COVID, and it'll always be there. So we see actually right now this fatigue with technology already. And even in some of we have a brand called Design Hotels. And there's a couple of design hotels in Europe. In fact, one that's a monastery turned into a 12-room hotel and Design Hotels. And you can go there to get away from everything. You check your phone at the door, and the first thing you enter is a dinner party that night with 12 people that you don't know, right? And then so you have that dinner party, you spend the next day, you get your phone back after that, but it's just a way to kind of trigger the reset. And I think that people are going to be looking for more of that. I'm also on a board of Simon Property Group, and we see a return back to movie theaters at the mall, which is very interesting, right? Because people are like, I need to get away from my phone and have an experience where I can sit for 90 minutes to 2 hours and watch a real movie again, right? I mean, people are looking for that. So I think that hospitality, hotels, other businesses, will evolve back. Everything is cyclical.
You know who else has done a good job of that? Are comedy clubs. Having to check your phone at the door, and it lets the comedians be themselves, and they don't hold back, and B, people are very present.
And Netflix did an event here last year, right, where they made you check your phone at the door. Everybody was talking about how hard that was. But, we go to the Masters every year. The Masters, it's like 3 days of check your phone at the door. And by the third day, it's like the best experience ever, right? You feel really quite refreshed and reconnected to the people that you went with.
I get the shakes the first 2 days, so that's a separate conversation. A lot of incredible brand marketers in the audience. When you think about trying to win on brand marketing, what's one lesson every brand marketer should keep front of mind?
I think it's easy to chase all the trends, right? It's easy to say we're fueling experiences. Everybody wants to go get their experiences, but maybe the underrated opportunity is to really make sure you're investing enough to deeply understand who your customers are. And in the age of personalization and AI, like being able to reach that person with real, authentic content and meaning is, I think, where it's going to be in the future. And so making sure you've balanced your investment and that you're connecting the dots between the marketing and the technology and the operations to be able to deliver at scale personally is where I think the future goes.
A lot of lessons people can learn from hospitality. I'm not biased. Well, thank you, Peggy. With that, we have a few minutes. Why don't we open it up if there are any questions? If not, I have plenty of questions for Peggy. I won't pick on you, Matt Weiner.
Oh, there's one in the front.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the question is about LLMs and search and how we're thinking about the future. I touched on it a little bit, but the industry for as long as I've been in it, which is 23 years, I always wondered why we made people put the date and the location in the box to search for where they wanted to go. I mean, it's just very constraining, right? Why can't you just ask for whatever you want? And we're finally here. It was well before my time, but it took over 20 years to get here. And so I think that it just opens up everything, right? And not having to type or click is the other piece that people don't really talk a lot about. But when you can just ask, right, you can iterate pretty quickly. And so I was experimenting with our own tool. And because I could throw this in here about, here's what I know, like, here's where we want to go. And then planning is still hard for travel, right? I'm sure you've all experienced it. Where are you going to go on the trip? Like, who you're going with? Who's going to decide? How much money? Which area, right? But now you can start to plan by asking questions and then pause when you need to, but then iterate your way into the answer. And because of the LLMs, because of the technology, you'll just be able to get there faster. And if you come to Bonvoy to do it, because we'll know you in a way that maybe Claude would know you better because you're talking to Claude all the time, but we'll know a lot about what you experienced last time and the time before and what your kids liked and, if you brought your pet. And so that allows us to curate a better, more deeper, specific experience for your itinerary than maybe a Claude could. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Hi, my name is Ngozi. I'm curious, are there any hospitality or travel startups that you are following or interested in? I don't have that kind of startup, but I just am curious.
Yeah, no, I love the startup space. I run our ventures team also as a side job. And in the past, we invested in a lot of venture funds to keep an eye on what was happening in hospitality. And now we're finding an explosion of startups coming to us to talk to us about disrupting some part of the travel journey, which I love. And we love to experiment with. We're looking at a couple. I'm not going to disclose who they are because I'm not going to tell everybody. But they're in everything from the inspiration phase to the payment area, right, to creating a better experience on property. And we use these startups as ways to just be the challenger to the way we've always done things in a very big company. And so we're really open to change at every part of the journey, and we welcome talking to startups about that because it pushes us forward. So thank you for asking the question.
We have time for one last question.
I'm a big fan of both of you, longtime Marriott customer and partner. So Peggy, this question is for you, but Sam, please weigh in. As you think about the balance of in experience, the premium nature of Marriott's brand, and then maintaining the accessibility of Marriott's brand to so many customers around the world. I'm just curious to get your point of view because you're interacting with the customer every day and you have a multitude of different offerings within the Marriott Bonvoy ecosystem. So just curious to hear how you think about that as you bring everyone into the Bonvoy rewards ecosystem, balancing premium versus accessible.
It's a question on premium.
How do you
versus-
balance premium versus accessible given you have members?
Yeah, giving the whole scale. You know, what we really find is that people don't, they're not really focused on just one price point. And they are traveling across it. The way we think about it is we have accessible and value for those trips that you want it. We're also there because we want to bring a new type of traveler in. So it's for both purposes. And when we look around the world, the growing middle class, like the reason we've moved into mid-scale is we think we can do mid-scale better. And we also believe that it will help us bring the middle class into the ecosystem around the world, which would feed travelers everywhere. And as they grow, obviously, through their lifespan, you know, they'll use all of other products. So it's really an entry point for us. And balancing it across the brand, that is the hard part, right? How do you have Marriott Bonvoy represent everything? But Bonvoy is really an ecosystem, I think, the way you think about Built too. And it's meant to give you what you need to meet travelers where they are, right? It's an ecosystem that can be what you want it to be because we can curate that experience for you.
I'm biased. Big thank you, Peggy. I mean, you have a remarkable responsibility, and your firm has managed it from top to bottom. And I feel like you don't get enough credit for the challenge of truly being at the helm and defining customer experience across all the price points, as Matt mentioned. So big thank you.